Hi, today we'll continue our Excel Fundamentals series and talk about pivot tables, conditional formatting, and pivot charts. Let's get into it. So now we've made some row-level calculations, we have created new fields, and it's time to analyze and aggregate this dataset. And the best way to do that in Excel is using pivot tables. Pivot tables is a really essential piece of Excel, and it's something that people all over the world use daily, from small companies to big Fortune 500 corporations. So how we can create a pivot table? We can click anywhere within this table, go to Insert, Pivot Table, and then click OK. This will introduce one pivot table in a new sheet. So how it works? It's a really intuitive drag and drop environment. Here on the right side, you have a list of the columns within your dataset, and below 4 different areas where you can drag those in. So within the rows and the columns, we introduce dimensions that help us slice and dice our dataset, while values is normally an area reserved for numerical measures such as sales, profit, and so on that we can aggregate on. For example, let's say that I would like to see the total of sales split by category in my dataset. I can search for sales field, bring it in here. You see already the sum of sales is calculated for me, and then I'm gonna find the category field and bring it under rows. What if I would like a further split by subcategory? Then I can bring that in as well. I can change the way this appears by going to Design, Report Layout, and show in tabular format. I find it more easy to look at. And I'm also not interested for the subtotals by category as is here, so I can go to subtotals and remove them. So now I have the sum of sales for each one of those subcategories, and at the very bottom, the total. What I can do is change the way this aggregates. I can go to the drop-down here, Value Field Settings, and show values as percentage of the grand total, and click OK. So now you have all those values converted into percentages that if you hover over and select, you will see that they add up to 100%. But let's calculate something more. I wouldn't like to change or lose this analysis that is based on these orders worksheet, so I would like to create one more pivot table. But instead of going to Insert, Pivot Table, and then selecting the worksheet where this is going to be introduced, there is a faster way. I can go to the sheet that already includes my existing pivot table, and then press Ctrl down, and then drag the mouse. A new sheet with a new pivot table is created, and I can customize it as I would like to. For example, I'm going to bring the subcategory out, and I will also filter away the blank values, and I would like to add the ship date as columns here in this table. So I can select the pivot table and find the ship date and bring it to columns. Now, ship date is a date field, and Excel is pretty smart to understand that a date field consists of years, quarters, months, and so on, but I do not care about all those parts. I'm just after the year detail, so I can go here to the columns and remove all other components, like this. So now I have the category here on the rows and the year of the ship date in the columns. I can remove the grand total as I do not need it. And let's say we start from scratch by introducing, again, the sales in our table. What if I would like to calculate the year-over-year development of sales instead of the absolute sum? I can go again to sum of sales, the drop-down, Value Field Settings, and then show value as, and if I scroll I have the option percent difference from. Now with this selection I have to select two more things, what's called the base field and the base item. The base field in my case is the year of the ship date, because I calculate the percent difference year over year. So if I scroll here, I will find this exactly here. And the base item is the benchmark based on which the percent difference will be calculated. And when I'm doing a year-over-year comparison, the baseline is the previous year. So I'm going to select this here and click OK. Now, as before, the cells have converted to the percentage calculation that I defined. And there is one column with no values. And that makes sense, because 2014 is the first year of data in our dataset. We do not have 2013 information, and that's why we do not get any values here, because there is no baseline against which we could calculate the year-over-year development. I'm going to remove again everything and keep the category. Let's say I bring in again the sales and the profit. There is one metric in business called profit margin, which is normally defined as the ratio of profit by sales. And we can calculate it dynamically in a pivot table using what's called a calculated field. You can do it by selecting any cell in the pivot table, going to Pivot Table Analyze, and under here, Calculated Field. You can start defining your field as profit margin equals profit divided by sales, and click OK. Now you have the profit margin introduced automatically in the pivot table, and you can format it accordingly, for example, pressing Ctrl 1, percentage, and then setting 1 decimal point. Let's go to the previous calculation we did with the year-over-year development for each one of those categories. What if we introduce one more dimension here, again the subcategory SA? You can see that the calculation expands and calculates again for the two dimensions that we brought in. But now that we have so many numbers, it's quite difficult to understand just with a glance for which years and subcategories we have the best performance or the worst performance. But what we can do to make our life easier is use color coding. We can select all those cells and then go to Home, Conditional Formatting, Color Scales, and select any of those scales. For example, this one. I can see very fast that the 2015 tables category had the best performance, while 2018 has been generally a red year. However, it can be the case that our dataset does not contain full year 2018 data, and in order to compare apples with apples, so a full year with a full year, we might want to exclude this year from our dataset. And we can do it by going here and unchecking 2018. You can see that the conditional formatting adjusts accordingly for the cells that we have in our range now. So now that we have done analysis in depth in our dataset using pivot tables, let's visualize it with some graphs. I'm going to duplicate again one of those pivot tables, and then remove everything, keep the years, the category, and I'm going to bring quantity in this time. What I can do is click on the pivot table, go to Pivot Table Analyze, and then Pivot Chart. I can select any kind of chart. In my case, I would like to have a column chart, click OK, and you see that I have an x-axis with categories and the legends that correspond to years. I would like it the other way around, so I would like to have years here on the bottom and the legends representing the different categories. What I can do is select the pivot chart, go to Design, and then switch row and column. But let's say that I'm changing category for subcategory, so I'm gonna bring subcategory in and category out. Now I have several columns, each one representing one subcategory, and the graph becomes a bit busy. What I can do is, after selecting the graph, go to Pivot Chart Analyze, insert Slicer, and then select the category field. Click OK. And this is a slicer, or in other words, a very handy dynamic filter. For example, by clicking Furniture, my pivot chart filters specifically for furniture-related subcategories. Same goes for office supplies, technology, and so on. You can introduce more than one slicers for a chart. For example, after selecting the chart and going back to Insert Slicer, select the country, for example, click OK, and you have all those countries for which you can filter further your dataset. And of course, you can use them in parallel, or if you click the Control key, you can select more than one options within these filters. And that's a wrap. I hope you liked it. If you found this helpful, like, subscribe, and comment below. See you in the next one.